Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeannie Love. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in this topic. This is Neurodiversity Insights in 20. I'm a neurodiversity consultant and coach with over 20 years of experience teaching and coaching individuals with ADHD and autism. Through my business, Beyond Coaching, I partner with organizations to unlock the strengths of their neurodivergent employees by improving inclusion. My goal today through this series is to help you understand and apply practical strategies for supporting cognitive diversity. Our session today is Neurodiversity 101, what it means and why it matters. You can see my contact information here. Feel free to take a picture of the QR code. It'll take you directly to my website where you can find all things about me. My website is beyondcoaching.pro. And you can email me at any time, jeannie@beyondcoaching.pro. Our goals here today, as they always are, is to spark a little new awareness about neurodiversity so that you can gain a deeper understanding and to inspire some small actionable steps that you can start. So my goal is that you'll leave here with some practical strategies to foster a more neuro-inclusive environment. These sessions are not designed to create immediate or broad sweeping changes. They're more meant to provide insights and spark ideas that can serve as a foundation that you can build from. It's possible that you'll leave this session here today with more questions than you have answers. And if that's the case, I hope you'll reach out to me through email or by LinkedIn, and we can talk through some things, or if you have a case study that you'd like to bring for one of these sessions, or some questions for future sessions or topics. I love all of those. All right, so since this is Neurodiversity 101, let's start with some baseline vocabulary. Neurodiversity is diversity in how our brains work. Neurodivergent describes a person whose wiring gives them strengths and struggles different from what we consider typical. Neurotypical is someone who isn't neurodivergent. So the vast majority of us are neurotypical. And a neurotype is a specific type of neurodivergence. So let's touch briefly on what some of those neurotypes are. Here are some that you may have heard of. There also might be some on here that you haven't heard of. But if you continue to do a little more research on neurodiversity, you might come across these neurotypes. I read something recently that said there are maybe hundreds of different neurotypes. Some of them, of course, will be much more common, and some of them are very rare. Here's a few of the ones that are more common. Dyslexia, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, or autism or ASD, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Tourette syndrome, sensory processing disorder, executive dysfunction, mental health conditions, and more. Okay, why does this matter to you? Why is this important to your business, to your organization, to your teams? Well, it's a very well-respected statistic that 20% of the population, or 1 out of every 5 people, is neurodivergent. So depending upon the size of your organization, the size of your team, it's very likely that you've already employed them. It's very possible that you don't know who they are. There's a variety of reasons why someone might not disclose their neurodivergence to you, and we can talk about that in a later session. But just know that they're there, and you might not know who they all are. It's also very possible they don't know who they are. They've lived their entire lives without knowing that this is what is going on in their brains. For whatever reason, they haven't been exposed to what neurodivergence is. And if they do, well, for example, I have clients who come to me, coaching clients who come to me, and they're in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s. And they're only just now discovering that they're neurodivergent. And so you likely have those people on your teams. It's also possible that if they know that they're neurodivergent, they've had a recent diagnosis, they might not know what kind of supports that they need. So you might be a very well-meaning manager saying, I'm here to provide whatever you need, but that doesn't mean that they know what they need. So all of this is a very important reason to be diving in to a better understanding of neurodiversity. Unemployment for neurodivergent adults runs at least as high as 30 to 40%, 3 times the rate for people without disabilities. I was having a conversation recently with a manager of a public defender's law office. And so this manager had perhaps maybe 20 employees that he supervised. And each of those 20 employees, because it's a public defender's office, they carry a large number of cases, maybe up to 100. And so one of these lawyers had missed an important deadline, like a really big deal. And so the manager was on his way down to the office to fire this lawyer. And his assistant comes to him and says, let's just pause for a little bit. Can you give him through the weekend to produce this document that you need? And so the manager goes down to the lawyer and says, you have until Monday, and I need that document on my desk Monday morning. So the weekend passes. He comes in on Monday morning, and there's this beautifully written piece of legal document on his desk. And so the manager's like, what's going on? And the assistant says, well, the lawyer has ADHD. And the manager says, I have no idea what that means. So the three of them, they get together and they start to talk about what ADHD means to this lawyer and his experience of it. And what it means is that in managing perhaps 100 cases, all of them have deadlines and they're fluctuating and changing and priorities are changing. And these are challenges associated with ADHD. So the manager and the assistant and the lawyer sat down and they would meet on Friday afternoons and they would look at all of the upcoming work in the upcoming few weeks, and they would reschedule and reprioritize and move his schedule around. Until eventually he was able to do the work independently without the support. So we could have lost this lawyer, and it would have been devastating to the lawyer, and it would have been detrimental to the law office as well, because public defenders are in high demand. There are not a lot of them, and he's brilliant. So he could have been one of these statistics. Luckily, they figured it out and got him the support that he needed. And when they are employed by you, only half of those neurodivergent employees feel that the organization is a place where they can be open about their neurodivergence. And so there's a lot of room here for us to create some psychological safety for the people on our teams by becoming more accommodating and more open to neurodivergence. Because when we do that, there are organizations in the United States that are creating programs intended to support their neurodivergent employees, and they're collecting data on the results, and they're finding some pretty awesome things. For example, teams with neurodivergent professionals can be 30% more productive than those without. Employees participating in autism at work programs. So a few of these organizations have programs specifically to recruit and mentor and support autistic employees. And they're finding these employees to be 48% faster, 92% more productive, and with a 90% retention rate. Pretty phenomenal. And in the next session, we're going to dive a little deeper into some of the more common neurotypes, which includes autism. And you'll be able to see why the way that their brains work actually lends itself to this pretty crazy and awesome statistic. Neurodiversity initiatives help managers become more effective by learning how to leverage the unique strengths of all employees. And that leads us to this idea of universal design, which is that when we put into place systems and strategies and supports for one person, it ultimately ends up benefiting many more. When I started as a special education teacher in the early 2000s, we had a system to get audio versions of the literature books for our students who were dyslexic. So they had some pretty significant reading challenges. Audiobooks were not a thing back then. So we had to fill out all this paperwork and we had to submit it, and then we had to wait for the audiobook to arrive. And if the teacher did not give us enough notice, then we would be behind. So in order to just get around all of that red tape, we would go home and we would read the book into the cassette recorders and we would record them and we give them copies of the cassette tapes. So all this work to get an audio version of the book for our students who are dyslexic. Fast forward to 2025, and I don't know, who doesn't have a subscription to Audible or who isn't listening to audiobooks from the library or podcasts? It turns out millions of us actually like to get our information this way. So this one strategy, this one tool that we had to support this like minority group of people who are dyslexic ends up benefiting millions of us. And so if we can take a look at the one or two people on our team and we can see that they need something unique or special, and we can put in the work to make that part of just how we do things. So it becomes part of our routine until we kind of just, it's habit and it's part of how things are done. It actually benefits many more. This is universal design. Okay, so what I want to do here is we're going to dive into just a couple of strategies here in a minute, but I'd like to pause and give you a moment just to think about the stuff that I've told you so far and what kind of ahas or takeaways or what kinds of things are resonating for you. And just take a moment to write those down so that you can come back to them later. Okay, wrap up your thoughts and we'll move on. Okay, I'm going to share a couple of strategies. I gave a presentation to about 50 managers at the local ski area a couple of weeks ago. I live in the mountains of Colorado, so there's a ski area not too far away. And at the end of these presentations, I like to collect the takeaways, the ahas, the what resonated with people most. And I get, a really broad range of things, which is really cool. But there is, of course, always overlap. And these three things kind of came up a few different times in the takeaways. And so I thought I'd share them here with you. So number one strategy, allow time for thinking and processing. At the end of this session, I'm going to ask, who has questions? And some of us who are faster thinkers might have some questions that pop up right away. But there are those of us like me who take a little bit longer to connect all the thoughts. And so the questions, the ideas, the thoughts, they don't necessarily come to me until a little while later, perhaps when I'm doing some chores at home or driving home or even in the shower. It's the same with the people on our team. So whether we're meeting one-on-one or giving information to a large group, we'll often say, who has a question? And it might not come until later. So for me, I'm going to share my information with you again at the end so that you'll know how to reach out to me to follow up. How can we provide a little bit of extra thinking and processing time for our people and a way for them to follow up with you? Like, oh, I do have a question, or I want to clarify something, or I actually had an idea I wanted to share with you. Number two, break tasks into smaller steps. This is like with our lawyer that we heard about earlier. He's brilliant, has this amazing mind to put together what he sees in a unique way that is useful as a lawyer, but he had some challenges breaking all of it down, like all of his cases down, maintaining the timeline, reprioritizing as things change and dates and timelines change. And all he needed was some people to sit down with him, help him to develop a routine or a system that worked for him. And then he was able to do it independently. We need to be able to provide that for our people so that we can get access to their really big ideas, their really brilliant brains. And the third one for today, share meeting agendas ahead of time. We're pretty good at doing this like in large formal gatherings, but think about it in our smaller team meetings or especially in our one-on-ones. We might shoot off a message that says, can you just stop by later? Or can you give me a call or check in? I want to chat with you about something. Well, we have a couple different brains on our teams. One is really prefers to know exactly what's expected of them so that they can be mentally prepared. And so to leave a vague message like that can really derail them. We also have people on our team, maybe like our lawyer, who might be a little bit more on edge because he knows that there's areas where he struggles. And so to drop a vague, will you just stop by or we need to have a chat, can really throw him for the rest of the day or someone like him because he might think, oh my gosh, I'm about to get into trouble again. And so just always for a little get together, just a little bullet point of these are the things we're going to cover. I just want to follow up on this, something like that. Okay. Because when we start to put these systems and these supports in place, when we expand the toolkit of strategies that we have to support our team members, as I mentioned previously, and yet there's more good news, neurodivergent employees and their supervisors agree that they have some pretty awesome strengths, which include hyperfocus, creativity, innovative thinking, and detail processing. So I want to thank you for your time. For those of you who need to go, thank you for being here. Our next session is in 2 weeks, February 26th at 1 o'clock Eastern. Our topic will be common neurotypes, so we'll dive in a little more deeply on some of the more common neurotypes. And until then, if anything comes up, questions, topics you're interested in, case studies you might want to discuss, feel free to reach out to me. And I will stop the recording now for anybody who wants to ask a few questions. We can have a little bit more of a private conversation.